Just because something is hard doesn't mean you're in the wrong situation. Just because something is hard, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Sometimes things are hard because they're hard. Full stop. Sometimes things are hard just because they're hard to do. And not because you're underqualified, or not because you're doing something wrong, or not because you need to go and find greener grass somewhere else.
Welcome to the 1110 Leadership Podcast, where we tackle issues at the intersection of leadership, faith, and culture. I'm your host, Rob Shields, Vice President of Strategy in 1110 Leadership, and I'm joined by my co-host, founder and CEO of 1110 Leadership, David Spickard. Proverbs 1110 lays out a bold and countercultural vision. When the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. We're here to ask, what does it look like practically to be this type of leader? Leaders willing to invest everything they have so that everyone around them can thrive. Join us on the journey as we lean in, listen, and learn how to become Proverbs 11:10 kind of leaders. The kind of leaders that make our cities rejoice. David.
Rob.
How are you, my friend?
I'm excited about your new look.
Stop. We got to stop this. This is nonsense. There's not that different, right? Explain to our listeners what you're talking about.
You've dimmed the lights. You've got a little bit of a glow on your face. I know you have your coffee and your candle, but it's just a little bit extra coziness.
You're making fun of me this morning. I don't appreciate this.
For this cold, rainy day.
The glow on your face makes it sound like I did makeup or something before I came on. For our listeners, that did not happen. So please, I have a reputation to preserve here. Get out of here. I'm not that invested in my appearance. Oh man. All right. How you doing, man? You doing okay?
I'm good. Yeah.
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 Oh, I'm excited for today's conversation. I think obviously we're excited about all our guests, but this one I think represents maybe a new space for us, a new conversation, fresh perspective. We haven't talked to many folks in the role of our guest before, but really excited about this one and how it came out. I think there was a lot of things. If our listeners don't have a pen and paper, they're going to want to listen to this one and then be able to write some stuff down because I was taking a lot of notes.
Yeah, Jesse Marble is just got a great perspective in the venture capital space of what it looks like to come alongside founders and to do so in a way that's holistic, which certainly is right down our alley. So the types of things he says, the nuggets he gives are really helpful, whether we're in that space of entrepreneurship and venture capitalist world or just general leadership. So yeah, excited about that today.
Yeah. I don't know if we did a word association, what our listeners think about when they think about venture capital. If I were to pick a word, I would think fast. I would just think like things are just moving and you're just like in startup mode and you're just going. And so I think you might even have a certain expectation about how this conversation is going to go. And I think this really upends all of that because Jesse, we get on all these topics. We cover a lot of different things, but the pace of the conversation and the way he shows up to it, I think really models everything that he is about and that the unique approach that his company is taking. Really good conversation. For those who don't know about Jesse Marble, he is an entrepreneur, marketer, and early stage investor focused on building and investing in companies that promote healthy and active lifestyles. He's currently the founder and general partner at Wildwood Ventures, which is backed by VF Corporation, where he invests in mission-driven startups. VF Corporation is a publicly traded company that owns brands like the North Face, Vans, and Timberland. Before doing that, Jesse scaled and exited Magneti, which was a digital marketing agency. And we get into this on the podcast, but he also was a podcast host specifically around failure called the Botchcast, which we get into a bit. I can't wait to give that a listen. And he's also led a failed healthcare startup called Brain, not like what's in your head, spelled differently. He's a proud Colorado native, husband and dad of 4. So we got into a lot of stuff as his bio entails, but this was a fun one. And we're really excited to have you our listeners hear from Jesse's unique perspective. Jesse, welcome to the 1110 Leadership Podcast. Can you see me? You guys are both making fun of me offline that I'm in a dark cave. So is this going to be a problem for us? Do I need to turn on another light?
No, we got it. It's great. We can see you.
I'm
Thanks
just,
for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here this morning.
yeah, for me, Rob, I just wonder if I even know you. is this,
Goodness
is,
You
protection
think
over
it's an alternate personality that's
Is
joining
this-
the podcast this morning because it's
is
dark?
this a new Rob?
No, it's not a new. It has been really rainy here in North Carolina. Jesse, I don't know what the weather is like out your way, but it's an emo vibe on the East
Yeah,
Coast right now.
same. Yeah, same. We're in Colorado, just south of Denver. It was rainy all weekend, but today is going to be one of those beautiful Colorado sunny days.
Man,
Oh, I
sounds
love it.
great.
I love that. We're big fans of Denver, where you hail from, and I know a lot of good people out that way. And we were just making some personal connections before we hopped on, where it's uncanny the amount of our networks are starting to bleed into each other.
That's right.
Any excuse that we have to go out west and see that beautiful
That's right.
scenery.
Friends in Denver, lots of friends here.
That's right. That's right. Jesse, I know our listeners are eager to hear from your perspective. We have never really had someone that wears the hats that you wear with your specific and unique background on the podcast. And as we've gone on this journey talking about leadership and leadership that makes the city rejoice, I think that we're really excited to hear from you and kind of the fresh perspective that you bring, especially with your bio that our listeners have now heard. But would love to just jump right into things, talking about a little bit of your story. And the venture space is a unique space. It's even in the news these days for a lot of different reasons. Can be a little bit of a moving target, as I'm sure that you have found. But I'd love, as you had transitioned from being a CEO of a growth marketing firm that you bootstrapped and scaled over 10 years, and now as the co-founder of Wildwood Ventures, would love to just know what drew you into that space. Because I almost want to ask, what did you want to be when you were 7? And was it a venture capitalist? Because probably not. Not a lot of people say that. When did that first get on your radar? Was that always part of the plan? Or when did that get introduced as a part of your story?
Yeah, I think the actual venture idea came to me actually in college. I was an econ and business major at a quirky little school here in Colorado called Colorado College. And one day a professor said, "Hey, you should start an entrepreneurship club." And that was a fascinating little provocation because I wasn't from a family of entrepreneurs. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a pastor. So I was a pastor's kid for a very long time. And he just apparently saw something in me that had some spark of entrepreneurship, started an entrepreneurship club. And one of the speakers we had was a venture capitalist. And he came and shared one day about this idea that the American economy is, we've got millions of businesses, and a huge portion of those are, call it mom and pop small business, 5 employees or less, the local coffee shop, local plumber, amazing volume and services delivered through those kinds of businesses. But then there's this kind of little niche of companies that we call startups that are these kind of high risk, go big or go home kind of companies. And after hearing him speak my senior year of college, I thought, you know what? VC sounds really interesting. So actually, he helped me get my first job in one of these venture-backed startups. And so I worked in marketing for a little while and then built a company called Magneti that you alluded to. And then the opportunity to start a venture firm actually came up through my business partner, David, who was running the corporate venture platform inside of this Fortune 500 based here in Denver called VF Corporation. And that's a company that many people don't know the name VF, but they might know the brands that VF owns, like the North Face. And so there was an opportunity to essentially partner with VF Corporation to launch a venture capital firm. And they're one of our investors. But venture is fascinating to me because entrepreneurs are a fascinating set of people. Research shows that entrepreneurs are not always the A students in school. There's also entrepreneurs index relatively high in a level of rebelliousness, if you will, for lack of a better word. There's actually entrepreneurs index really high in things like dyslexia and other unique learning challenges. Entrepreneurs are just crazy enough to think we can change things. And that takes a level of kind of discontent. There's like this, I call it like this holy discontent, that you have to look at the world and say, this should be better, and I should be the one to change it. And so I love working with founders, and that's the joy of our work at Wildwood and Venture Capitals, meeting with founders every week, the ones that are saying, I think I can neglect an amazing corporate career, for example, and start a business. The joke is startups are people who hate 9 to 5 so much, instead they'll work 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. And that's just, being around those people all day is an absolute joy.
That's fascinating to hear you describe that, Jesse. I think we all can, whether it's in us or in the people that we're around who we know who are entrepreneurs, that characterization hits the mark. It actually makes me think that there's really hope for a lot of people who feel like they are not going down the straight and narrow and have these wild ideas, and there's a place for them. I'm curious because we think so much about leadership and the health of an organization, the health of a company, the health of a startup is so centered on the health of the leader and the effectiveness of his or her leadership. As you have engaged with these startups and in the venture capital world, how have you developed your own philosophy of leadership and how that then motivates you for what you do as you invest in these leaders?
Yeah, there are so many inputs and ideas and topics, I think, that have shaped how I think about this, Dave. It's probably the ultimate question, right? It's what are all the ingredients that create the recipe of your own leadership? And yeah, we could talk about that for a couple hours, but a few things that come to mind. I'm a man of faith, and that is key to how I process the world and how I want to treat people, whether that's someone on the street, my neighbor, my actual neighbor, people I'm working with every day. The golden rule and reciprocity, I think, is a powerful, simple idea about how we hope to navigate the world. But I will actually toss out an idea. There's a YouTube video that I watch at least once a year, maybe more. And there's a YouTube channel called The School of Life. And it's these little animations, these like little 7-minute little vignette videos. And there's a video called How to Be Warm that I watch at least once a year.
This is good for you, Rob.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah.
You didn't say, is that a darkness joke that you're making fun of my room, David?
This video is perfect for the vibe that you have right now.
How to be warm. How to be warm. Welcome to my little cave.
I received that.
And in this video, he talks about the difference between when you meet someone, there's a difference between people who are what he calls coldly polite and people that are warm. And imagine you go over to someone's house and they're so good at all the things you're supposed to do to welcome a guest. They offer you a drink and they serve you well, but there's something missing. Like they're being hospitable around these mechanics, but there's something missing. But imagine you go to someone's home and you would say that it was an experience that was warm. And they are maybe cracking jokes every once in a while, or they make light of situations and they ask about your day. And they don't only ask about work, but they ask about all these other personal things. But at the end of the video is this little comment that fundamentally, I think, has shaped my leadership and how I approach people. He said the difference between the coldly polite person and the warm person is their view of humanity and the person in front of them. The person who's coldly polite tends to think that this is a professional, austere adult who only wants to talk about and be treated in very serious ways. But the warm person never forgets that we are scared little kids trying to navigate the world. And that even the person in front of us, who might be the CEO of a Fortune 500 business, has fears and anxieties and stress. And that if we instead lean into the humanness of someone, that's when we will crack jokes or offer them a magazine as they're going into the bathroom or whatever might feel so much more connective than just, this is a professional transactional conversation that I'm having with someone. And there was an article too, I can't remember who wrote it recently, but this idea of the power of asking how your teammates are doing at work, just the basic, hey, how are you? How was your weekend? Like that stuff can get weaponized or transactional, like just, oh, I'm supposed to ask you a question before we talk about work. But there's like all this research about how connective it is when you pause and actually care about somebody's humanity and their family or whatever's going on outside of work. And so that little video has been super informative. Just this, like, we all are professional, and yes, we're doing big stuff and there's stress there. All those things are real. We're trying to build stuff and there is accountability, and we're trying to be people of excellence. And I was on a podcast the other day. I was meeting with all of our investors, and my dog started throwing up in my office. You're like, no matter how polished we want to try and be, real life matters. And so I think that is a core tenet, I think, to how I think about leadership, is that we're just not all as fancy and polished and professional as we want to make it look for the world.
Yeah, that's really profound, Jesse. And I'm going to be Googling that video right after we hang up, and probably need to add that to my arsenal, maybe even more than once a year. But I think that when I'm asked what we do, sometimes I simply, when I'm giving the short version and coaching leaders, or saying executive coach, sometimes I just help leaders become better humans, or I try to. And I think that we all need help being better humans. And so the investing, helping to see someone's humanity and all its beauty and all its flaws, and just like being able to, what is the role of vulnerability in leadership, is something that we talk about a lot in both our peer groups and in our coaching work, of just the fear around, I can't afford to be vulnerable, right? I can't afford to show that I have flaws. I can't afford for my dog to throw up during this podcast, when in actuality, that humanizes you in a way that it could have helped, right? Especially how you handle it.
Right.
If you lean into it and just laugh it off and show that you're human, that can be such a winsome approach to leadership, right? I'm not sure if it helped or hurt on that podcast or not.
Yeah.
But it can, right? It can. It's not always this hindrance that we think it is. And this is baked into your story too, right? The lessons you've learned, even personally, about failure. You're not coming at this just from YouTube. You've got real lived experience, specifically around failure. You launched a healthcare startup that didn't succeed. You even launched a podcast about failure that failed, which is really meta, right? But called the Botchcast. I'm a huge fan of puns, so you got me there.
Yep.
Can you speak to that journey and how your experience with failure has really, how do you bring that into your work now? How does that inform your view of entrepreneurs and of leaders and leadership in general? Because I imagine entrepreneurs, it feels so high stakes, and they're really not trying to fail. And yet you're seeing the beauty of what those lessons can teach you. So I would love for you to speak to that.
Yeah. Oh man. Another wild idea that we could talk about for hours. What happened for me and why I launched the Botchcast was even just realizing how bad I was at navigating that kind of in my own heart and soul when things didn't go like I wanted. And there's this idea, Brene Brown says, like, most frustration, resentment, or whatever word you want to use in life is usually because of missed expectations, a gap in expectations, whether that's for somebody else. I expected somebody to do X and they didn't, and I'm upset about that. Or on ourselves, like I expected something of myself and I feel that, like, anger, frustration, whatever term you want to use for kind of disappointment when some expectation wasn't met. The podcast itself was truly just this journey of, I just want to just lean into that topic so much and see what nuggets I could learn. And there was so much joy in that journey. By the way, this is not a podcast advertisement for that podcast, because Rob mentioned it failed. I could not keep up with that podcast amidst I was running Magneti at the time. I didn't do both well. And so there's learnings in that as well. But I think some of the most fascinating, talented people, and this is all so cliche to say and to hear, but when you get good at living it, as powerful as how many times Edison failed at the light bulb before he came up with 1,000 times he failed before. And even thinking with entrepreneurs, one very tangible way that failure and rejection is a key kind of daily part of life is around fundraising for startups. And the ability to believe in something deeply, down in your belly, down in your soul, that the world needs this, and to stand in front of investors and pitch that over and over again, and for them to say no. The ability to show up the next time with passion and energy and belief is crushingly difficult. It is so much harder to do in practice when you have heard no over and over again. And so that failure of pitching is something that we talk a lot about. And that in many ways, like resilience as a skill set, grit, great book by Angela Duckworth about grit and how we can teach it to our kids. It's so it gets talked about so much, but the mechanics, being in the mud of that every day is brutal. And so when I think a lot about failure, yes, there's the tangible fundraising and rejection of that. I had a healthcare startup called Brain. It was a Bluetooth headset intended to predict seizures. And all kinds of learnings, things, about why it went sideways. But a positive learning in that journey was that when you have a big ideas attract big talent. It's one of the headlines I learned through that startup, which is that I was amazed that when you throw out a big wild idea that you believe can solve a brokenness in the world, and specifically in this case, it was for people with epilepsy. It was amazing, the kind of people that gathered around that idea, that wanted to help, that wanted to join, that wanted to bring resources to that. And ultimately, I just didn't think I was a talented enough business leader and entrepreneur to pull that project off. I don't even know if 10 years later, I have the chops to pull off that startup if I had tried it again. But it was, the reality of startups and failure is that the odds are against you in pretty intense ways. And the mental weight of that is a journey that every entrepreneur has to manage.
Hey, business leaders, are you and your team truly thriving? The Thrive Assessment from 1110 Leadership is designed to help you find out. This powerful 360 tool uncovers key leadership opportunities and challenges to help foster growth and help you build a thriving workplace culture. With insights into trust, health, relationships, impact, value, and engagement, you'll gain a clear understanding of where you stand and how to improve. But what sets the Thrive Assessment apart is the relational process. It's so much more than just an online survey. Our team walks with you through the results, providing support and coaching to help you and your team thrive together. Ready to take your leadership to the next level? Visit 1110leadership.com to learn more and start thriving today.
Jesse, I'm curious then, as you came off those lessons and began to think about Wildwood Ventures and the opportunity you have to focus on building and investing in companies that promote health and active lifestyles, being outdoors. I assume that's something that's near and dear to you, particularly being from Colorado.
Yeah,
It's just,
definitely.
when you go out there, you can't help but get a backpack and some hiking boots and some skis and figure out how to enjoy the outdoors and the beauty.
That's right.
What are you trying to solve through Wildwood? And how would you say Wildwood may be unique or different in the approach you're taking in the venture capital space?
Yeah, awesome question. So I hear two questions. One around kind of our thesis, what we invest in, how we think about that. And then the other one is maybe what are the opportunities to create a culture and a firm that's different and redemptive in some way. Venture capital is about investing in the future and what the future can look like, and hopefully catalyzing the kinds of entrepreneurs and ideas that we want to exist in the world. And we just have this belief at Wildwood, we have more technology in our pocket than sent men to the moon the first time, literally. By orders of magnitude, iPhone 16 is 200 million times more computing power than Apollo 11. We have more widgets and entertainment, and you can travel the world from your phone in many ways. You can explore the cosmos from your phone. And more connection, more content, more knowledge. Yet, there's a lot of brokenness in the world. There are so many ways that humans don't flourish. And you see this around, for example, mental health stats. We have anxiety and depression at rates that we've never had, addiction, physical health, loneliness. Loneliness is at all-time highs. Wait, I thought social media was supposed to give us all these friends, right? And so Wildwood's thesis is that technology is amazing and technology is not going anywhere. We are not Luddites to think we should smash our phones and live in caves. That's not the solution. But can we be the types of investors that are hopefully catalyzing businesses that bring life to the full, that bring human flourishing? And you mentioned outdoorsy. It's one of our thesis areas, but we actually invest across these 5 thesis areas of human flourishing: physical health, mental health, social relationship and connection is actually one of our areas as well. And so at Wildwood, we just really believe there's a whole generation of investors and entrepreneurs that want to invest in the right type of technology and the right kinds of businesses that, as one proxy way to think about it, is the stuff for my kids and my grandkids. I want to lay on my deathbed and for my grandkids to say, thank you for being a part of the kinds of technology that brought humans joy, thriving, flourishing, whatever word you want to use. So that's really important to us. And then the second question about what are we trying to build at Wildwood as a venture firm? I think our thesis is very redemptive, sure, but there's also a lot of how in venture capital that represents opportunity. There's a very fascinating idea to me in the venture space, which is I think many VCs treat founders poorly. And that's strange to me and also borderline embarrassing. But because of the power dynamic, VCs have the money and the founders want it in many ways. That has created a set of very common behaviors that I think are very just sad and embarrassing. One of the things we work really hard to do, for example, is try and give feedback to founders when they pitch us. You'd be amazed at how many times a founder pitches a VC and they get ghosted. They just never hear from them again. And we try and be responsive, communicative, provide feedback. Now, we're not always perfect. We get busy, things fall through the cracks. I'm not going to claim that we're A+ on that, but that's something we work really hard to try and do. Again, I believe that founders are the ones changing the world, creating the world, putting a dent in the universe, as Steve Jobs used to say. We're just here to enable them. I think that founders are the heroes in the ecosystem, not the investors. And yes, we have a place and we have accountability and we have a job to do, certainly as investors, but it's the founders that create the leverage. And so I think that I've seen a strong movement even in the last few years towards VCs trying to treat founders with the kind of mutual respect that feels very normal to me. And so that's one of the simple ways I think we're trying to build a venture firm that's, call it redemptive or countercultural in some way.
That's really good. Jesse, when we connected ahead of this conversation, it really struck me the different approach you're taking in this space of really humanizing the founder, really, in a way, which sounds like a problem that you don't really think about existing until you name it, right? Like the dehumanizing approach that could be with that power dynamic you're referencing. But your approach, you want to really foster deep human-centered relationships with the entrepreneurs you're backing. And so I wonder if you could camp on that a little bit more beyond feedback of when you think about the folks that you're investing in, how is your approach a little different in how you're being present and supportive within that ecosystem?
Yeah, so there's a model that we use. So within early stage investing, you've got a bunch of different models. There's what I'd call traditional VC, which is write checks, sit on the board, maybe, probably, provide intros and try and be some value add for sure, but not real hands-on as much. And then you have other models, almost like there's accelerators, for example. Accelerators are this model where maybe you've got an idea, maybe you've started a little bit, but it really helps you accelerate. It's usually like maybe an 8 to 12 week program. Sometimes you go in, like Y Combinator in San Francisco is one of the most famous accelerators in the world. You go to the Bay Area for 8 or 12 weeks and you go through this like boot camp, which is really hands-on for 8 weeks, 12 weeks, but you're a part of a big cohort. We use a model. There's also a model called a venture studio. And a venture studio is actually where usually the studio team is starting the business. They're actually incubating the business and they'll go find someone to run it once they've validated and believe there's kind of traction there. We do a hybrid of all of these at Wildwood. We call it one term we use is an open venture studio. What that means is we work really hands-on with our founders after we've invested, but we don't start our own companies. So that's why we're not a traditional venture studio. So it's like a custom accelerator, long-term accelerator. We don't have a great term for it, but it's much more hands-on, and we work closely with founders. And what we found is just that again, like starting a company is a very lonely journey. And even amongst these like peer groups, who do you call regularly with both the lows when you need help? But here's an interesting idea about culture and connection is who's someone you call to celebrate something with? Who's the person you can call to say, hey, this is going well for me, and I want to celebrate that with you, and there's no bragging or jealousy or any layer of weirdness besides we're just celebrating with a friend. And so our model is intended to be roll up the sleeves, much more hands-on, be available, yes, for business things and strategy and all of the advising work that we do around the business. But it's amazing how much humanity there is too, Rob. There's a thread on a bunch of questions here. A CEO is a human with all kinds of needs and dilemmas going on in their lives, whether that's business or personal. And so our model is built to be much more connected to the entrepreneurs that we work with. And I'm grateful. And it's messy and there's highs and lows. We're going to be higher highs and lower lows the deeper you get in these things. But we're confident that it's a model that serves founders better. I think it de-risks businesses better for our investors. And that's an important part of what we need to balance as well. At the end of the day, whether you work in ministry, nonprofits, or us in early stage investing, I hope we're doing it in a way where we are light to others. And for us, that huge stakeholder group is the founders that we're working with.
Jesse, we ask our listeners at the end of our episodes to give a bottom line, kind of a big arching thought or idea that we can take with us. As you're describing the way you come alongside founders, I'm curious to hear as your bottom line, and it can be multiple bottom lines if you need it, just what advice you give to them. What is the common, perspective or ways to encourage that you're finding that founders need across the board? And I'm sure this is going to translate beyond just a founder of a startup, but leaders in general. I'm curious to know what you're seeing as the thing that they need the most and the ways in which you are living out what you just described, which is coming alongside of them.
Yeah, one thing that's coming to mind is, so there's really interesting research around the millennial generation and some of the psychology and parenting that millennials received. And you hear all these jokes about millennials receiving participation trophies and stuff like that. And as millennials, we joke, but yeah, do you think we were in charge of buying the trophies? No, of course not. That's the parents' fault. No, I'm only kidding. But there's this, one of the things that's been researched is this idea of when you are given opportunity and you are told that you are special and you get good grades all the way through middle and high school and you are presented in college with all these amazing opportunities. If you are used to things working for you generally in life, what can happen is when you hit your first set of really hard challenges, you can accidentally, subconsciously say to yourself, I shouldn't be in this situation. That thought is what we have to, to quote scripture, like take every thought captive. This is an idea that is not true. So here's the big headline that I have had to learn and I will continue to learn, and I want all our founders to learn, is just because something is hard doesn't mean you're in the wrong situation. Just because something is hard, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Sometimes things are hard because they're hard. Full stop. Sometimes things are hard just because they're hard to do. And not because you're underqualified, or not because you're doing something wrong, or not because you need to go and find greener grass somewhere else. There's just like this warrior mode. So there's a movie. Okay, I'm going to show my Colorado side for a sec. There's a movie called Free Solo. Alex Honnold is a climber who free soloed El Capitan. If you've never watched Free Solo, you have to do it. This movie is absolutely bananas. He free solos El Capitan. It's a 2,500 foot face without ropes. And A slip of any finger or foot and you're dead. And anyway, it's amazing. This is an incredible movie. But he makes this comment where he says the warrior mentality is not, do I try harder? Am I try hard enough? That's not how a warrior thinks. A warrior simply thinks, what do I need to do? I will do that. The warrior's not saying, am I trying hard enough? And is that enough? It's not even the frame. The frame is, what do I need to do? I'm going to go do that. And so the headline, and again, this is my own journey. Like, I don't think I'm good at this. This has taken me. That's why I had a whole podcast. I'm trying to figure out how to navigate this. Being in all these situations that felt hard naturally because the challenge itself was hard. And so I backed away because I thought, I must not be qualified. Or let me go find a place where I can succeed easier. And I was missing out. I went through this like late 20s existential crisis where I realized how much I'd missed out in life in things big and small because I had backed away when it got hard. And so that like a headline for me, and this is just like my own journey, and I want founders to hear this, and so many people, it's just because we encounter resistance or something gets hard, it doesn't mean we shouldn't be there. And in fact, it's a classic, like I think it's Brene Brown quotes it. It's like one of the Stoics things, like suffering is not in the way. Suffering is the way. Like maybe when it gets hard, actually, here's the next level that I'm trying to mature into is maybe when it gets hard, it's a sign you're onto something. And that the resistance means you're doing something that is truly like different or countercultural or the world needs and it doesn't have pathways for yet. That's just, it'll take me my whole life to be good at that, to internalize that. But that is just something I pray all the time about. Enjoy the hard, enjoy the suffering, because maybe that's not a sign to stop. But sometimes, not always, sometimes there's discernment to know that physically hitting your head against the wall is not good for your brain. But resistance or difficulty might be a sign you're onto something.
Yeah, Jesse, you talk about what it means to flourish, and that's a powerful, robust word. And I think that the truths that you're naming here are not limited to just leadership, to just work, to just entrepreneurship. You're talking about life lessons that apply to all of life, which really I think embodies kind of the holistic approach that Wildwood is taking in the venture space. So thank you for sharing those. Can we hit you with 3 more rapid fire questions before we let you go? Okay, we're just gonna shoot from the hip here. Yep. You've already hit us with so much more multimedia than we're used to getting from guests, which is awesome. We've got YouTube video recommendations. We've got books that are peppered in. You just dropped a documentary. I watched that, by the way. I'm terrified of heights. I was literally sweating as I was hearing you describe it because of how scary I was just watching it. So beware. If you're not a fan of heights, just caution as you watch, but it is a great documentary, Free Solo. So what's something you've read, watched, or listened to recently that is influencing how you think about your leadership?
I'll shout out here Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. When you think about the thesis of Wildwood, we're talking about what is life for humans right now? What will life look like 5, 10, 30 years in the future? How are we investing in what it means to be human and to have a wonderful human experience on Earth? Essentially, the thesis of the book is that we are kind of pandemic level of hurry all the time and borderline panic about everything and how much we have to get done in life. And that book is just like this gentle invitation to, you don't have to do any of that. How about Sunday Sabbath as it was designed to be a day of rest? And how could you orient your life, for example, around a Sabbath? Time away, silence. You don't have to be a monk to realize that sometimes just sitting on a couch without your phone in your hand has actually become really difficult to do for even 5 minutes for most Americans. Amazing book. Highly recommend.
That's great. And that's a great segue to my next question. Is there a daily habit or routine that helps to keep you grounded?
Yeah. This is something growing up in a pastor's home, I think I was encouraged to do, but literally took me till my late 30s to be good at. So I've gotten a lot better at just the morning quiet time. And sometimes that's reading scripture or prayer, but sometimes it's just sitting quietly. And for my personality, I'm not good at sitting still. I'm not good at at resting. And so starting the day in just a position of surrender to say, all right, what is today going to be like? And some days at the end of the day, you look back and it was a tragedy. Some days you look back and today's episode was a comedy. But looking at the day ahead with kind of curiosity and saying, I am equipped, I am able. It's not all going to be easy, but I'm curious what today's episode will be about. I'm not great at it every morning, but it's something I've gotten much, much better at. It's amazing how grounding and focusing it is for me to start my morning before the kids. Let's get up.
All right, last one. We talk about what it means to thrive a lot on this podcast. And so you've talked around that in a lot of different ways when it comes to your model and how you're investing in the flourishing of founders. But when you think of the word thriving, what does that mean to you personally?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I think I've got my own definition actually tends to be, I notice, presence. You just know that moment, like when you're around your kids or a friend where you're present and you're responding to them for what they're talking about as opposed to wanting to tell a story about your day or something like that. So I notice that I think a downstream output of my own thriving tends to be when I'm present with others. And that might be high energy, that might be low energy. There's 1,000 different ways you can show up and be present. But I've just noticed for me, that's when I notice that I'm thriving, is when I'm present in whatever conversation, whatever moment I'm in, whether that's work or personal or wherever that might be. There's a totally different lens that I'm looking through, all the way back to the first comment about like how to be warm. It's like when you're seeing someone for the human that they are right in front of you, what they need, as opposed to whatever my agenda is. Again, maybe it sounds like I think I'm amazing at that. But every day it's a battle to be present and not be thinking about my big to-do list at work or whatever that might be. But thriving and presence are probably the terms that tie together for me in where I'm at in life and what I want to be for those around me.
Jesse, that's so refreshing. My guess is in the venture capital world, a lot of the themes that we would be hearing today are productivity and results. And what you have given to us is be still and be present. Just want to acknowledge that as being really profound. It's something that we need to internalize for ourselves because we are so much in a producing world with that anxiousness that comes from expectations of others or expectations of ourselves that keeps us from being still and being present. So thank you for sharing that today.
Yeah, thanks, David. I appreciate it.
A lot of pearls in this conversation. Jesse, I look forward. This is one of those ones where I can't wait to immediately go back and re-listen to it. And I think what I hear you say in our time together is that it really matters what you produce in the world, right? That holy discontent, right? That's there for a reason. Pay attention to it and go get after it. But also there's this undercurrent that I think is a deep breath of fresh air, is that you are more than what you produce. That I think that's what really allows and enables the stillness and the presence and like all the things that keep us and allow us to slow down, live unhurried, and how much that can really lead to our own thriving and flourishing as we seek the flourishing of our neighbor and our companies and whatever problem that we're trying to solve in the world. Jesse, thank you so much. We're excited to see where Wildwind takes you in the world and would love to see you next time you're making a trip on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So thankful for your friendship.
Thank you both. Great. I appreciate the questions, and I hope there was some little nugget for somebody in my ramblings and talking about YouTube and Alex Honnold. But yeah, I appreciate this conversation, and thanks for having me, guys. It's been great.
Thank you, Jesse.
Awesome. Thank you. To learn more about 1110 Leadership, visit our website at 1110leadership.com. That's the numerals 11, then spelled out TEN leadership.com. That's 11 TEN leadership.com. There you'll find more resources to equip you on the journey of becoming an 1110 leader. You can also get connected to our growing leadership network. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend. To help others find us, you can also rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.